At 6:12 a.m., 3 Russian aircraft were completely unaware that a dozen FP-2 drones were streaking across the Black Sea at 262 feet, heading straight toward them. 25 miles ahead of the drone swarm lay Belbek Air Base, Russia's most important airfield in Crimea, and home to these aircraft, as well as multiple air defense systems. In less time than it takes to deliver a pizza, Ukraine would deliver a heavy blow, one of the most significant combat aircraft losses Russia has suffered in this war. Before continuing, comment 2 if you support Ukraine, 3 if you support Russia, and 4 if you support peace.
The drones flew in 3 groups of 4, spread across a 1.2-mile front just above the water. At 262 feet, they remained below the radar horizon of most search radars, effectively invisible until they closed to within 19 miles, where the curvature of the Earth no longer concealed them. The lead group crossed that line at 6:13 a.m. Ahead, Russian radar antennas were already turning, scanning an empty sky where the drones would appear seconds later. Ukrainian controllers could not see what was about to happen, their video feeds only activated during the final approach. For now, they watched telemetry only, altitude, heading, and airspeed. 12 green icons crept steadily toward a coastline bristling with systems designed to destroy them. Then the first radar detected them. A NABO SVU early warning radar, positioned on high ground northwest of the main runway, rotated its antenna every 6 seconds. Most radars struggle to detect small drones. Their radar-absorbent coatings and composite structures scatter returns into noise. But the NABO SVU operates in the VHF band, with wavelengths long enough to reflect off anything larger than 3 feet. Stealth shaping becomes irrelevant when the radar wave is larger than the target it strikes. The FP-2's 20-foot wingspan lit up like a bonfire on the scope.
At 6:14 a.m., the radar operator saw 12 contacts appear, range 24 miles, bearing 315, closing at 93 miles per hour. He immediately alerted the S-400 battery. Threat inbound, request engagement. The response came within seconds. Denied. The S-400 would not engage. The issue was not readiness, but physics. The S-400's targeting software is designed to filter out birds and weather clutter by automatically ignoring anything slower than 62 miles per hour. These drones were flying at 59 miles per hour.
On the S-400 screens, the contacts flickered, appearing on one sweep, vanishing on the next, never forming a solid track. This was the velocity filter at work, essentially a noise filter for the radar. When Russia designed the system in 2007, the logic made sense. Anything slower than 62 miles per hour was clutter, birds, or weather balloons, not worth tracking. But drones flying at 59 miles per hour were not clutter. They were the primary threat, and the S-400 automatically discarded them. The only system that could engage at this point was a Pantsir S-2, but it was 1.9 miles away, guarding the fuel farm. At maximum road speed inside the base, it would take 4 minutes to reach the radar site. The drones would arrive in 6. The tactical display grew tense. The NABO continued tracking, feeding data into the command network on the assumption help was en route. The FP-2s crossed the coastline at 6:17 a.m., still at 262 feet, invisible to everything except the NABO's long-wave radar. Russian GPS jammers were saturating the spectrum with enough electromagnetic noise to disrupt cruise missile guidance. But the drones did not rely on GPS. Each carried an onboard computer running 3 simultaneous navigation systems: GPS when available, an inertial unit tracking acceleration and rotation, and a downward-looking camera matching terrain below to stored satellite imagery. The camera recognized the coastline, road intersections, building clusters, and the distinctive shape of Sevastopol Harbor, fixing its precise position through terrain contour matching. The computer reduced images to grids of light and dark pixels and compared them to stored maps. If the grids matched, the drone knew its exact location. If off, say 164 feet east, the computer calculated the error and corrected 10 times per second. The system was confident without GPS. Russia could jam every frequency, but it could not jam a camera looking at the ground. Range to the nearest Nebo was now 5 miles. Time to impact, 3 minutes. The Pantsir, 2 miles from the radar site, suffered an unexpected delay. A fuel truck stopped dead in the access road, driver likely asleep. The Pantsir crew sounded the horn. No response. Radio calls for the truck to move, still nothing. 30 seconds passed, then 45. The Pantsir swerved around the truck, crossed a drainage ditch, suspension groaning. 1 minute lost. The drones now had 2 minutes to target instead of 3.
At 6:19 a.m., the lead FP-2 climbed to 1,312 feet for its terminal dive. The Nebo SVU detected it instantly, but detection did not equal destruction. The radar could track the dive angle and compute the impact point, but it could do nothing to stop what was coming. The shaped charge warhead struck the antenna array 7 seconds later, turning a $35 million VHF radar into wreckage on the hillside. A system capable of detecting stealth aircraft at 62 miles had been destroyed by a drone it had seen 6 minutes earlier. A second Nebo SVU, 2,625 feet to the east, burned 90 seconds later. Belbek was now blind. No early warning, no long-range detection. Threats could close to within 25 miles undetected. Yet the S-400 still had its 92N6 fire control radar, capable of guiding missiles to targets without Nebo support. The 92N6 now worked frantically, sweeping continuously for threats it should have seen minutes earlier. Someone had decided this radar was too valuable to lose and had built protection for it. The problem was that the protection was better at keeping rabbits out of a garden than stopping drones. The 92N6 sat 1,312 feet from its missile launchers, its phased array antenna scanning the sky for targets the Nebo could no longer cue. This was the radar that made the S-400 work. Without 92N6 guidance, the missiles were just expensive fireworks.
Russia knew Ukrainian drones had been destroying radar systems across Crimea for 3 years. Someone had finally decided to protect this one. 3 FP-2s were now approaching from the northeast, their terminal cameras locked on the 92N6. The radar could not be missed. Its electronic emissions made it glow against the cold December ground. The lead drone began its dive at 6:22 a.m. at a 47-degree angle outside the protective steel cage designed to defeat horizontal attacks. The shaped charge warhead punched through the radar vehicle's roof and detonated inside. Secondary explosions rippled through the compartment as electronics burned. The steel cage stood untouched, protecting a system that no longer existed. Cost of the cage, perhaps $50,000 in steel and welding. Cost of what it failed to protect, $60 million and Russian pride.
By now, the Pantsir had finally reached the radar site, just in time to watch the third drone destroy a communications relay linking the S-400 to the regional air defense network. The remaining 7 FP-2s were heading for the runway. The Pantsir crew had roughly 90 seconds to stop them. The vehicle halted at the radar position. The crew skipped stabilization procedures and spun up the search radar. In the darkness, multiple drones were still airborne. Every second of delay brought impact closer. The operator immediately acquired 3 targets at bearing 045, range 2.5 miles, altitude 1,312 feet and descending. 80 seconds to weapons release. The Pantsir carried 12 missiles, each capable of accelerating to 3 times the speed of sound in 2 seconds and pulling turns that would tear a fighter apart. Its tracking radar could lock a soccer ball-sized target at 6 miles. 3 slow, straight-flying drones should have been easy. 12 missiles against 3 drones should have been a professional team against teenagers. This time, Ukraine deflated the professionals. The first missile launched at 6:24 a.m., but the one-way attack drones did not maneuver. They were programmed to explode. The only question was which explosion came first. The missile won. The lead drone disintegrated in a fireball at 2 miles. 11 missiles left, 2 drones remaining. Second shot, 6 seconds later.
Ukrainian controllers had been watching and did the smart thing. The instant the missile launched, the 2 remaining drones crossed paths. Their radar returns merged into a single blip on the Pantsir screen before separating. The radar saw only reflections, not shapes. When 2 drones flew close together, their returns combined into one energy spike. The missile seeker was tracking a specific blip. When that blip suddenly became 2 moving in different directions, the computer had to guess which was the original target.
It was a gamble, and the seeker guessed wrong. The drone it chased exploded. The one it should have chased kept flying. The second detonated at 1.5 miles, but the third was now at 0.7 miles, inside the distance the missile needed to arm its warhead. Every guided missile requires space to activate its fuse. Too close, it is just a metal tube. The Pantsir missile needed 3,937 feet. The drone was inside 328 feet. The operator switched to guns. Twin 30mm cannons, combined rate of fire 5,000 rounds per minute, designed to create an impenetrable wall of fire. The problem was geometry. The drone dove at 52 degrees, the guns could only elevate to 45. Tracer rounds arced harmlessly into empty sky. 200 rounds in 3 seconds, none close. The shape-charged warhead struck the engine compartment at 6:25 a.m.
Belbek had just lost its point defense system. Early warning radars were rubble. Fire control radar destroyed. The Pantsir was burning. Yet 4 FP-2s remained airborne heading for the runway. And there, on the apron, in the middle of an ongoing attack, sat a MiG-31 interceptor with its canopy wide open. This is where Russian decision-making became performance art. While drones were destroying the base's defenses and explosions lit the night, 2,625 feet away, someone in the 38th Fighter Aviation Regiment decided this was the perfect moment for scheduled maintenance. Perhaps they thought the attack was over. Perhaps they were trying to launch aircraft to hunt the drones. Whatever the logic, the result was a $40 million fighter exposed in the open, no air defenses covering it, canopy open like it was waiting for a car wash.
The FP-2 approached from 1,247 feet. Its camera clearly showed the MiG-31. Twin tails, engine bays still warm from a previous sortie, dark rectangles of the open canopy. The controller placed the aiming point at the wing root where fuel tanks met the weapons bay. Altitude, 656 feet. Terminal dive. The shaped charge warhead detonated at 6:28 a.m. A shaped charge does not just explode, it focuses. Lined with a copper cone, when the explosive fires, it collapses the cone inward at 26,000 feet per second, turning solid metal into a needle-thin jet of superheated liquid. That jet punches through anything in its path. This is how a 231-pound warhead destroys a 44-ton tank. The jet penetrated the titanium skin, through the fuel tank, into the weapons bay where missiles waited. Secondary explosions scattered burning debris across the apron. The aircraft that once hunted Ukrainian drones now lay scattered over 656 feet of concrete.
3 FP-2s still circled overhead, cameras recording the destruction below. And somewhere in the 38th Regiment's command post, someone made a catastrophically bad call: scramble fighters to hunt the remaining drones. 2 Su-27s began rolling out of hardened shelters at 6:31 a.m. Engines spooled up. Ground crews performed rapid pre-flight checks.
The Su-27 pilots thought they were the hunters. They were about to become prey. By this point, the two Su-27 pilots had completed half the pre-flight checklist. But getting these Iron Birds airborne takes far longer than backing a car out of a garage. First, the engines. A Saturn AL-31F turbofan needs 90 seconds to spool from a cold start to idle thrust. Rush it and you risk a compressor stall. Unburned fuel pools in the combustor and then detonates all at once.
That is how you turn a $35 million aircraft into a fireball before it leaves the ground. Next, avionics. The flight computer needs 30 seconds to boot. Navigation requires another 45 seconds to align the inertial platform. Gyros must establish a reference frame so the aircraft knows which way is up. Skip it and the systems guess. Then flight control checks, hydraulic pressure, control surface sweeps, stick forward, back, left, right, watching flaps and stabilators respond. If something is frozen or disconnected, better to find out now than at 460 miles per hour. Then, weapons radar initialization. Missile seekers need cooling. The R-73's infrared sensor runs on liquid nitrogen. Heat it too fast and you carry useless weight. All of it takes at least 3 minutes. 5 if careful, longer if error codes appear. The pilots at Belbek were rushing, skipping steps, trying to compress a 5-minute process into 3 because drones circled overhead and every second felt borrowed.
At 6:33 a.m., ground crews were finishing pre-flight checks. In 45 seconds, the pilots would begin taxiing for takeoff, but the FP-2s were already diving. The two Su-27s sat on taxiway 3, 164 feet apart, awaiting tower clearance. Technicians moved around the aircraft with flashlights, completing final checks and engine start procedures, completely unaware that 3 drones were closing from the north at 112 miles per hour. The 38th Regiment probably had about 50 Su-27s. In the next 4 seconds, that number would drop to 48. The first shaped charge warhead detonated at 6:34 a.m., penetrating the wing route into the weapons bay. 2 live R-77 missiles hung on the racks. Sympathetic detonation hurled fragments 656 feet across the runway. Aviation fuel sprayed across the concrete and ignited. The fireball rose high enough to illuminate the entire airfield. The second drone struck the trailing aircraft 2 seconds later, from above. The explosion punched through the canopy, through the cockpit, into the avionics bay below. The aircraft did not erupt like the first, it simply burned. Fire spread through the fuselage as fuel lines ruptured. 2 Su-27s destroyed in under 4 seconds. Total value, $70 million. The third drone dove toward the control tower. The explosion at 6:35 a.m. shattered the south-facing windows, shredded radar displays, and turned communications gear into scrap. Comment 2 if you support Ukraine, 3 if you support Russia, and 4 if you support peace.